Well, hello, friends. It's John Martin. I'm super excited to be with everyone today. And I have my new friend, Jessie. Jessie, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So nice to meet you in person. I'm thankful for our friend Brianna introducing us to talk today. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you have a journey you've been through, and I know a little bit, but I just wanted to, for our listeners, if you could just give a little background on you and your story.
Sure. So, so I moved down here about 20 years ago when I got married to my husband, and we have three amazing kids. And our youngest, Phinley, was so back in 2021, we started noticing some symptoms in August. She would have trouble lifting her arm above her head. Sometimes it was painful for her to walk and things like that, to climb in and out of chairs. She was 3 years old at the time. And so we took her in, we took her to urgent care, we took her to ortho, and they took x-rays of her arm. They looked at everything. They said everything looks great. It's probably just growing pains, could be transient synovitis. Let's just keep an eye on it, give her a little bit of ibuprofen. She was kind of having fevers off and on, and we'll follow up in a few weeks. And so in September, everything was progressively either staying the same or getting worse. Her gums started swelling, so we took her back to her doctor in Niceville, actually, and she said, I have to send you to a pediatric ER in Pensacola, and she said, please get the boys somewhere for the night. Plan on being gone for the night. I think it's going to be a bumpy ride. So we went to the ER in Pensacola. They ran blood work. Her white blood cell count, the doctor came in and said I ran it 3 times, but her white blood cell count was over 100,000, and white blood cells should be somewhere around 6,000 range. And she said, I'm so sorry, but it's leukemia, and we have to transfer you to the Pediatric Oncology Center at Sacred Heart in Pensacola. So that's where everything started. That first week, she was in the pediatric ICU. They were pumping her full of fluids. They ended up having to do an emergency intubation. They found that there were spots in her brain from it. They thought she had fungus in her brain, which could have come through her compromised immune system, just being outside and exposed to things. It just comes in and there's no immune system to fight it, and that it had taken over. And they said the mortality rate for this is 99%. Her only chance is if we do an emergency jet flight to Shands in Gainesville. That was on her birthday, her 4th birthday in 2021. And so they flew her there. In the middle of the flight, we got the call, and they said the cultures came back that they took from her sinuses to figure out what it was in her brain. And they said, we can't explain it, because they had specialists from all over the country look at everything, and they knew it was this fungus. And they said, we can't explain it, but it's not fungus. It's not fungus. So we got her to Shands, at least knowing that we weren't battling that. She remained intubated for about 2 weeks. During that time, while she was intubated, actually, the leukemic buildup in her bones, in her marrow, became so great, and the pressure was so great, it actually popped one of her bones, her arm bone. So she had a broken bone in the hospital. It was very touch and go. They told us they weren't sure what was going on with her brain, if it was leukemic infiltrates, if it was what it was. But they said, we need you to know that when she comes out of intubation, she's probably not going to be the same child. that you had a month ago. And so she came out of intubation. We had to relearn how to walk, how to eat, how to speak, how to color, everything, absolutely everything. But you see God's hand in all of it, because my job at the time, I was actually working as an infant toddler developmental specialist. And I was working with children from birth to age 3, learn how to do all of those things. So I was able to really work with the pediatric therapy team that came in at Shands to help her relearn all of those skills. And we were able to get her almost completely back. So it really was a miracle. So once she was stable there, they sent her back to Sacred Heart in Pensacola. She completed her treatment there. It took about 5 months. She would be in the hospital for 4 to 5 weeks, home for a week, and then back in the hospital. Finished her treatment. Everything looked good. We went home. We thought that was it. We were home for 7 weeks, and then we got the news that she relapsed. So we had to go back in. She was sent to St. Jude for the last several months, and went through all the treatment options there. And then the team there told us, we're sorry, there's nothing more we can do. And having to go back and explain that to her brothers, ages 6 and 9. But what was amazing was we got that news, and we hadn't shared it with the public yet. We hadn't told anyone that we were at the end of our treatment options. It was just my in-laws, my parents, and my husband and I that knew. And I got this text, and we were thinking, what do we do? Because she just wanted to go home. She wanted to go home so bad. I mean, she said to me one time, we were in our apartment, and she said, Mom, I don't want to die. But if I do you think Jesus would let me live in a house that's just like ours at home? And
Gosh.
she just wanted to go home, but she was not stable enough to get there. It's about an 8-hour drive, even flying. They said she only has about an hour that she can be between hospitals, and to get her from St. Jude all the way back to Pensacola, I mean, how do you do that in an hour?
Yeah.
And so we were processing through all of that, and I got a text on my phone from someone who said, I was just contacted by someone who owns a private jet company, and she felt like she needed to reach out and say that if you ever need a jet flight home, that she will make the arrangements and she will get Phinley home. And it was a 45-minute flight.
Okay.
So we got her home,
Got
and
her.
she was able to be home for her last couple of weeks. And she ended up losing her fight. It was the evening before her 5th birthday.
Goodness. I just can't imagine. Wow. That's just such a walk, what y'all had to go through. Gosh. So, and you've been, a believer. You and your husband were believers in Jesus through this. I know you have faith, but when you go through something like this, it's just, I know you're still, today, it's a grieving process that you're going through, that there's nothing anybody can say or do,
Yeah.
and I'm just so thankful that y'all have a relationship with Jesus, and you have faith. Is there anything you can say about that? And I know you said, y'all saw miracles along the way, and your daughter's with Jesus now. She's with us now. She's not, she's not gone. She's in a spiritual heavenly, body,
right.
which we'll all be
right.
one day for those of us that believe. But is there anything that you want to say just about how you've been getting through this, since then, and what, if any, advice you'd have for anyone listening that's maybe suffered a loss, that they're dealing with?
The only way I've been able to do that is through Christ. Like, it's really only been through him, because, it's you go through the journey and you reach the end of it and everything collapses. Everything collapses. I mean, you're back home. We were back home with a 6 and a 9-year-old. How do you help them process it? You're not the same parents that they had the year before all that happened. They had spent that year living with grandparents, just kind of, because I had to be in the hospital with her. My husband had to continue working. I had lost my job. I couldn't continue doing my work while she was battling. And so you're home, you have a new family structure, and you're all trying to figure it out together. And I think the only way we were able to do that was because of God. And the thing I kept hearing over and over and over again, because we had so many Christian friends and families reach out, and the same message I kept hearing, and I felt it too. I felt it in my spirit, was God is crying with you.
Yeah.
He's crying with you.
Yeah. He's close to the brokenhearted. Yes. And, well, you're doing remarkably well. I mean, when I met you a while ago, I was like, I know you've been talking through this story, and that's not easy, but you carry a lot of joy and a lot of peace, and most people that have been through what you've been through would just never believe, how is she doing this? It hasn't been that long. So I can tell it's because you have a relationship with God and your faith. Well, I know you're super passionate now. I know you've also written a book. We can see here, folks, called Surviving to Thriving, Living Your Best Life with a Hospitalized Child.
Yes.
So Jessie has written this book, and tell anybody out there, what's this book about and who needs to get it?
So when she was first diagnosed, and you start looking at having to deal with the hospital side of it with a child. I mean, if she was 4 during the majority of her treatment. How do you do that? What does that look like? And, my husband and I looked at each other and we said at the very beginning of it, we don't know how to do this, but we're gonna get good at it. We're gonna get good at it for her. And so what does that look like? How do you do that? And so we spent time researching and trying to find material out there, because we're not the first ones. Yeah. We're not the first ones to go through this. And so we thought there has to be something out there. There's no way families have to recreate the wheel every time they get a diagnosis. And if anything has been written, we couldn't find it. So after she lost her fight, I just felt like I needed to write this as a guidebook for other families who came after, because we learned so much during that year. And some of it we learned through trial and error. Some of it we learned from other families that we met and their experiences. Some of it we learned from hospital staff that kind of explained things to us. But we spent time at 3 different hospitals, and there are certain things that seem to be true, at least in our experience, no matter what pediatric hospital you're in. And so we just wanted to give families a handbook. What are you allowed to do with your child in the hospital? How do you help them still be a kid? How do you deal with things like laundry? How do you deal with things like meals? What do you pack when you go in there? What can you expect as far as space for your own groceries or your own items? What's usually available at hospitals for families to use, and what do you need to bring? What are the rules? So just little tips and tricks that we learned along the way. And when I was feeling like I really needed to write this, it was so interesting because I felt like God kept telling me, you need to reach out to Craig Brockman. You need to reach out to Craig Brockman. I had never spoken with Craig. I had never met him. He had connected with us when he learned about her journey, and he was following everything. And I didn't know anything about him other than I knew that he lived in Michigan and that he had written a book or two in the past. And so I was like, God, he's gonna think I'm crazy if I just reach out to him. Like, I have this book idea. But I did. I actually sent it right before church one Sunday morning, and he responded immediately and said, this is so amazing that you reached out, because he said, I have been feeling like something needed to come of this. Something needed to be written out of everything that she went through. And it turns out he's actually a retired family nurse practitioner. So he has that medical background and understanding, plus a published author. So he had all the connections and everything. And he said, I am here for all of it. So this would not have been possible without him.
Without Craig. Wow. Well, Jessie, if anyone's listening, maybe that's just has been put in a situation like this, with a child or a loved one, is there one key piece of advice that you would say to them, like if they're facing something like this and just beginning their journey, trying to deal with something like you did? Is there any one thing that comes to mind that you would say to that person today?
I would tell them to say yes. Say yes. When someone comes up and wants to be your tribe and wants to support you in some way, I think for a lot of us, in our culture, we want to be independent. We don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to admit that we need help.
Okay. That
it's not okay where we're not okay where we're at right now, and we need help. And that's actually one of the chapters in here, is how to say yes. It's saying yes to your child or your loved one as much as you can. If your child wants to build a blanket fort and go in there to kind of hide away in the middle of their hospital room, to say yes. I have pictures of Phinley receiving blood products in her blanket fort because she needed some time away. Just saying yes and accepting that help.
Well, we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to segue now into a little bit about what you're doing with the Rally Foundation. Talk to us a little bit about that and what you're doing there.
Sure. So Rally Foundation started in Atlanta about 20 years ago. Rally Foundation Gulf Coast was started about 11 or 12 years ago by Cindy Bonner in Pensacola. And they exist to do a couple of things. First of all, the big thing is they try to advocate and provide funding for pediatric cancer research. So one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize, I didn't, is that only 8% of available cancer research funding in the United States goes to pediatric cancers, which makes it severely underfunded. Medically, children are not miniature adults. They need different treatments. Phinley lost her fight after receiving treatments that have been unchanged since the 1990s because treatments haven't been researched. The funding hasn't been there. And we were one of the lucky ones. We met families whose children were receiving research or receiving treatments that haven't changed since the 1960s because research hasn't been done. And I know we can do better. And 93 cents of every dollar that Rally receives goes to their mission. Beyond the research and funding, they also provide real support for families in our area. So they support families dealing with pediatric cancer all the way from Panama City to the New Orleans area. They have over 30 families they're working with right now in Okaloosa and Walton counties. They provide bill assistance, meals if the families are in the hospital. They provide snacks, activities, toys. They brought Phinley bed sheets, princess bed sheets for her to have in the hospital. So they are doing amazing work. And we chose a $300,000 career research grant that we made our goal to fully fund in Phinley's memory. And we have raised over $250,000 of that so far through Rally Foundation.
Wow, that's awesome. That's so cool. And so are you kind of involved in the group, like events and things like that? Is there anything coming up or any way anybody's interested in finding out about Rally Foundation? How do they get involved or just learn how it could help their child?
So we actually have a page on Facebook for our area, my little team in our area, called Phinley's Fighters. Both are spelled with a PH, Phinley's Fighters, if people want to find us on Facebook. We have a fundraising event coming up in Fort Walton on February 28. We're partnering with Suds and Cinema for that. They're doing 2 showings of The Incredibles. So 100% of ticket sales for those 2 showings that day of The Incredibles goes to Rally Foundation. And we also have our big fundraiser of the year coming up on March 26th over in Pensacola, which is Rally on the Runway.
Oh, cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, this has been great, Jessie. As we come to the end, I always like to ask, is there anything else you want to share with anyone?
One thing that Phinley taught me is that when you have a relationship with Christ, you can have joy no matter what your circumstances are. You really can. Wow. She taught me that. And I have learned that since then. Wow.
That's so amazing to hear this, the faith that she had, as a young child, and what she walked through. And I know my heart goes out to you and your husband and your family. I know it's been such a tough journey, but I'm so thankful that, y'all know Jesus and that there's a future hope. That's while we do this show, we want others to come to know him, because this life is so short. It's over so quickly. And if we have our belief and trust and we give our life to Jesus, we have eternal life. And life is tough. We all have problems. Some of us walk through things much more than others, but we just encourage everyone listening to start reading the Bible. Every day, get into the Word of God, read the Bible daily. God will speak to you through the Scriptures. He will give you hope and encouragement. Get into a church, a Christ-centered, Bible-believing church, and just go. You'll never find the perfect one. Just go, and you'll find the one that's for you, and then get into a small group that you can do life with. And thank you, Jessie. Thank you so much for coming on. I know this is going to help a lot of people.